I'm Lindsay Marsh. I am the clinical coordinator for the Marriage and Life Therapy program at Edgewood College. I'm a licensed marriage and life therapist and professional counselor, and I'm here today with Dr. Peter Fabian. You have been in the field, marriage and life therapy field for over 40 years, professor of psychology. You founded the Marriage and Life Therapy program at Edgewood and were the director. You just have a few accomplishments under your belt. And today is sharing your model that we want to talk about, which you refer to as TIBS, templates for interactional behaviors. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the creation of that and the name behind what that means?
It started probably about 30 years ago when I was trying to find a way to account for why does therapy work the way it does. Not just can you do the techniques, but is there some underlying principle underneath all types of schools of therapy on helping the clients make the change that they wish to make. I call it templates in the sense that it's works with patterns. Template is a pattern. Every therapist works with a pattern when they use the diagnostic and statistical manual to determine from assessment and diagnosis what the diagnosis should be. So for instance, there may be these types of symptoms lasting this long equals this type of a diagnosis. The difference with this model is I take that same principle of a therapist looking at patterns, but put it to an entire system and not just the individual client. So the template is pattern recognition, pattern diagnosis for the entire family system that's coming in to see the therapist.
Mm-hmm. So there's so much there, but I'm wondering if you could take a step back and tell me a bit about your view of emotional core needs and just basic needs of people and how that led to this model before we get into the details of that.
As I said, I was trying to determine are there some core dynamics underlying all types of therapy. And one of those is what I call core emotional needs. Mm-hmm. That there are three basic core emotional needs for every human being. And the first one is the sense of self, that I exist. And if that is shattered through trauma or abuse, then the person's sense of who they are is very diffuse. So for instance, working with somebody who has been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, it's not unusual for them to actually say there are times when I feel like I don't exist. Mm-hmm. If you're not recognizing that that's what their basic problem is, mm-hmm. then any other type of treatment you're developing will not have any success. You have to address that most basic core emotional need. Once you account for that, then the second layer of core emotional need is appreciation. We all need to be having a sense of self-esteem, self-worth, that we matter to somebody else, or that what we do has some value. Mm-hmm. That's at the area where you would do some assertiveness training, appreciation training. If you are not recognizing that, then you can't go to the third level, which is that of affection, that we need to be in healthy, adult, mature relationships. If we haven't dealt with the previous two, we're not going to get into a healthy relationship. We're going to get into a dependency relationship where we're expecting our partner to satisfy some of those earlier or more basic core emotional needs. So it's a package for a therapist, and it's be very helpful for the therapist to be able to distinguish which layer of issue does a client come to me with. And I see those core emotional needs beneath every one of the diagnoses that a therapist can come up with.
Mm-hmm. It's very systemic focused, and yet it's interesting because you made the distinction that this is a disease model and not a family cycle model. Is that correct?
Correct. It is not a family developmental model. And the reason for that is it's like in a medical model when you are looking at symptoms or an x-ray and you see patterns that are there or blotches on the x-ray or masses that are in the x-ray. It's not really going to tell you what's a healthy one going to be like. It's going to tell you, okay, this may be cancer and it may be progressing to stage 3 or stage 4. Mm-hmm. I call this a disease model because the more dysfunctional a family is, the more rigid their patterns are. The healthier a family system is, the more flexible they are to adopt new behaviors from outside sources or outside influences or outside people. In a dysfunctional family, they tend to be rigidly stuck in their patterns. Mm-hmm. Therefore, the more dysfunctional a family is, the more accurate these templates and patterns are for dysfunctionality assessment.
Right. So it's almost a way of viewing the systemic lens to pinpoint, that's that inductive versus deductive reasoning, I think you mentioned as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most therapy is conducted with what's called deductive reasoning. The therapist gathering a whole bunch of data, initial assessments, consent release to look at previous documentations from previous therapy, a battery of tests that they could do, 3 or 4 sessions of interviewing to be able to determine what could be there. So they take this big, broad base of data, try and filter it down to see what could be happening there. That works if you've got enough time to do that. However, in a crisis situation, or if you've got the crisis phone that goes off in the middle of the night and it's not your client, you don't have 3 or 4 sessions to figure out what's going on.
Sure.
You need to be able to respond pretty quickly. So in this model, it uses inductive reasoning. You basically ask some key questions to determine in a decision tree, is it this pattern or template, or is it this pattern or template? And you should be able to make a pretty sound assessment within the first 20 minutes to tell you, is it this one, or is it this one, or is it this one? And therefore I can build my treatment plan based on that pattern.
Sure. And that's done through a series of presumptive questioning, it sounds like. And with even the video, there's a point where you say, I think I have a good sense of what's happening here. And that's kind of you, I think, using that inductive reasoning and then starting to fit it into a template model. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Presumptive questioning is a technique similar to what Carl Whitaker would do,
Yeah.
in that based on the information I already have, I pretty much know where this is going to go. And so when I give them a presumptive question, it means I already have a sense of what the answer is going to be. That's the presumption.
Sure.
Which makes it easier for the client to basically agree. And if I'm wrong, disagree. If I don't use a presumptive question, sometimes the client will be hesitant to answer. They may be vague. Every therapist knows that it's not unusual for a client to wait till the last 10 minutes before the session's over to say, well, what I really wanted to talk about is. And you wanted to get to that a lot sooner than the end of the session.
Sure. That makes sense. So this is continuing to move it along as well. It's not stall this process. Let's get this in the template and keep it going. You also mentioned about co-opting the pathology. Can you talk a little bit about what you mean by that?
That's a technique for this model that recognizes there's an awful lot of emotional energy around a pathology. And if what the therapist is trying to do is to break through that pathology, they're going to be with a lot of resistance. We call that homeostasis. Co-opting the pathology is saying, let's not fight that pathology, let's invite it, almost support it temporarily, so that we are not being bumped out of the system and we can get into the system because nobody's fighting me, because I'm agreeing with them.
Like a gatekeeper of the system.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And once I'm in, then I can start producing changes as long as they see me now as one of them or an ally and not somebody who's trying to disrupt or stop the patterns that they've been using for decades sometimes.
Sure. Well, and you even talk about it's beyond decades, it can be generations, where you need to take a look back at the past 2 generations, and you can also, with fair accuracy, predict the next 2 generations beyond what's happening now as well. Is that right?
That's correct, and that's based on the fact that, again, the more dysfunctional a family is, the more stuck they are in the pattern.
Yeah.
And patterns tend to be inherited. We learn the way we interact from our family of origin, who learn to interact from their family of origin. So I say you should be able to have a good sense of 5 generations of the system you're working with, and 2 above and 2 below. Beyond that, it breaks down into too many variables. But you can be pretty accurate. It gets kind of interesting for the clients when you start talking about, well, I bet your grandmother was kind of like this. And they go, how did you know?
Yeah.
Well, because your grandmother is just like your mother, is just like you, and you're all doing the same thing. And let's see if we can't stop this before you pass it on to your daughter and granddaughter.
Yeah. Acknowledging there's some roots to this, and then that gives them the ability to make a different choice, to put
Yes.
different roots down.
Yes, exactly. Empower them to begin to make those different choices.
Right. So the video that you filmed with the couple, and you're using some of these techniques with that couple's work. Can you explain a little bit about the video, and if there's anything else about this model that you wanted to include as we're setting that up?
The video is intended to be a training adjunct to the text, and it's how to work with a couple from the TIBS model. it's unscripted, so I didn't know what the couple was gonna bring or where it was gonna go.
Sure.
And I was trying to make sure I got as many of the principles we just talked about in the demonstrations as I could, and I think it worked out okay.
Yeah.
So,
Wonderful.
shall we take a look at the video?
That sounds great. Thank you.
And any children?
We have two.
Two?
Sophia is 8 years old, and Becky is 6 years old.
And Dad always wanted a boy.
Yeah, did good.
And how long have you been married?
10 years?
10 years.
First marriage for both?
Yeah.
Yep.
Either of you on medications for psychiatric
No.
or psychological issues? No. Okay. And was it a crisis call that brought you in? Like somebody suicidal or something like that?
No.
And the intake worker would have asked you, and then what would you be coming in for?
We're just having a lot of conflict lately, a lot of fights.
Yeah.
And lack of intimacy.
Okay. All right, that gives me enough to start with.
Great.
We're ready, okay. So good afternoon, my name is Peter Fabian, and I'll be working with you today. And I see from the form here that you're Joe and you're Brianna.
Mhm.
What brings you in today?
Well, we are just not really seeing eye to eye lately. It's been this way for a really long time, but I'd say like the last 2 years. But recently it just got so bad that I went with the girls. We have two daughters, one's 8 and one's 6, and I went to my parents' house because the fight was just so big and I couldn't really stand being there anymore. So I think we kind of, that kind of got him to, I said, like, I'd like to go to therapy. He agreed to it, so I set something up.
Okay. And what do you see as the reason you're coming in today?
We seem to get into fights that just seem to escalate, and we start yelling a lot, and we can't seem to find a common ground. And I've actually been sleeping in the guest room a lot lately, which kind of bothers me. And then we had this big fight last week that I thought she was going to leave me and move out, but she ended up just staying at my parents-in-law's house for a couple nights, and then she came back, and we kind of haven't been talking very much since that big blowout. I think maybe we're kind of afraid to have another big fight like that.
And how long ago was that big blowout?
Like middle of last week.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned that this started happening about 2 years ago. What was going on in your lives about that time? Were there work changes, stuff happening in the relationship?
Sophia was starting school. I work part-time as kind of like tutoring, and I picked up a couple more kids. What was going on in your work life?
I guess,
I feel like you were working more.
yeah, I was busy at work a lot, and we were starting to Sophia started school, and we still had Becky at home. So there was kind of like a lot of transportation issues, like getting one kid to school, and then I was asking Brianna a lot to take care of Becky while I was at work.
So that was could be a factor that you were less available to help out at home and leaving more of the burden on you?
Yeah, and my parents have been helping out a lot more with childcare too. I guess like, yeah, finances back then were like a little bit of an issue. But since then he's gotten a promotion, so increased pay, but like the hours haven't
Still
really
not
changed.
more available like you used to be.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you resent him for that?
Yeah, I get pretty upset about it.
And so when these little fights happen, would you say you initiate them or she initiates them? Because you finally
That's a
get
good
home,
question.
you've been working hard, she's frustrated, building up more and more tensions because you're not there to help. Who triggers it?
I guess when I get home after a long day of work, I come in the door and the kids seem pretty happy to see me, so I feel good about that. And then I'll start asking Brianna how her day was, and she'll tell me that it was not so great and the kids were misbehaving. And
Let me see how that plays out. Why don't you just have that conversation right here now between the two of you?
okay. So, hi honey, I'm home.
Hi.
Oh, how was your day?
Well, Becky had a tantrum. I told her no when she wanted an extra dessert. And yeah, kicking and screaming.
She seems fine now.
She does, yeah. I don't really. Yeah, she's fine right now. She wasn't earlier.
Okay.
Okay, let me just ask a question. You have two children. Which one's yours and which one's yours? I know biologically they're both yours, correct?
Yeah.
But emotionally, if you have two parents and two kids, they tend to connect more with one or the other. So, who's your...
I would immediately say Becky, the younger child.
And so Becky can usually get Dad to agree to her things sooner than Mom will? Would that be your perception?
Can you say that again?
Sure. Becky's acting out, you just said, right?
Yeah.
Because you said no.
Yep.
Is Dad more likely to have said yes?
Yeah, from my stance, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So she's acting out because she could probably get her way more if Dad were home.
Yeah.
Another part about that is, since he's been gone more, how much do you think she's missing him?
Oh, I think she misses her dad. She's definitely her father's daughter. So,
And so you get the other one, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sophie, she helps me a lot around the house, especially now that, yeah, I think a lot has been on my shoulders.
And between Sophie and Becky, do they get along a lot?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part.
So Sophie's a little bit older, but do you see that she tends to boss Becky around a little bit? Or is she more the nurturing, caretaking older sister?
She's pretty nurturing. I wouldn't necessarily say. There are times where I feel like, bosses Becky around though. I would say a little bit of both.
So let me ask this question, both of you. If Sophie's the one who's closer to you, I'm wondering how much she's patterning after you. Would you see yourself as a nurturing person too?
I mean, I think I was for a while. I think my fuse has gone shorter, especially with Becky. Yeah, lately I feel like I'm not as nurturing as I once was.
Okay. Have you seen a difference with that?
Yeah, Becky's definitely more of like a tomboyish kid. We, you know, watch sports on the weekends sometimes. She likes to go out and like do fun things. She's more of an outdoorsy type person,
And
which
that
I
would be reflecting some of your preferences too?
definitely, yeah, I like to get out, enjoy nature and stuff like that.
When Becky is acting out, how much of that is reflection that she senses the tension between the two of you?
Well, I don't really think she acts out as much as Brianna says she does. But I don't see it, apparently, during the day.
Yeah, I don't, yeah. I mean, my parents and I see it. I guess I haven't thought about it like that. I've just.
Well, if she's a mini version of your husband, and the two of you are
Yeah.
having fights all the time,
Yeah,
is she being a pseudo husband, stand-in for him?
I mean, she's doing a really good job.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I see that.
Okay.
Yeah, the fighting has increased and I don't see him as much to fight with him, I guess. And when we do see each other, it usually leads to a fight.
I'm beginning to have a sense of the pattern that's going on here. Let me ask you, how does it resolve itself? Because you don't stay mad forever, or you may stay mad forever, but you don't fight forever. There's times when you're not fighting. So how does it resolve itself?
I think we just kind of don't talk about it afterwards. There's kind of a...
But who breaks it off? Because you say it starts escalating. It takes two people to keep escalating. All of a sudden somebody stops escalating and you break it off.
He just leaves.
I would say it's probably me who like can't take it anymore, and I'll go into my study or into my room and watch. Like I said, I've been staying in the guest room a little bit more often lately. I listen to music in there.
So you withdraw as a way of your coping mechanism.
Yeah. Although
Yeah.
this last time she withdrew in a big way by going to
Yeah.
parents.
That may have been withdrawal, but it also could be a rather assertive act. Which would you think it was?
I think I finally did, I would say assertive. I finally did something.
I'm getting a sense, and since I don't live you folks, I don't know for sure, but I'm getting a sense that in this relationship, as in all relationship, there's usually one person who's a bit more the lead and another person who's a bit more the follow. One more a little bit assertive, one a little bit less assertive. And my sense is, and question to you is that you would be the more assertive one and you be the less assertive one?
Yeah,
Right?
definitely.
And so is part of the concern that you'd want him and expect him to do more, and you'd be happy not to.
I can see that.
Would that be true for you?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you want to do with that expectation?
Well, I guess I think, I don't know, I mean, I feel like I haven't really seen any action from him in terms of like being a parent or even just being like a spouse in a really long time.
So you want him to step up.
Yeah,
Okay. Because you're taking the lead and he's not stepping up.
yeah.
So you're exhausted.
Yeah, I am. I mean, even with tutoring and taking care of the kids, I just don't really feel like my job ever ends, and I've been leaning on my parents a lot more, and I don't want to be doing that.
When you hear your wife say that, what happens inside of you?
Well, the first thing I thought was there's not really a lot of room for me because the kid's grandparents, her parents are there when she needs the extra help. So I feel like I'm kind of almost not needed. And plus on top of that, I feel like, well, at least when I'm home, I don't really see the kids acting out as much as she says they do when I'm not at home.
Well, Becky doesn't have to stand in for you.
I see what you're saying.
So Becky's not required to take on the tension. Does that make some sense?
It does.
Okay. So at some level, you're not feeling very needed.
Yeah, that's exactly what I feel.
And so how long have you been depressed?
I'd say at least a couple years.
It's funny, that seems like 2 years ago you started having conflict, and 2 years ago you started becoming depressed. Have you been assessed for that and on medication or anything?
No, I think I just look for solace in some of my things that I like to do, like listening to music and going for walks and things like that.
Okay. And when you hear about your husband's depression, did you know about that?
I mean, I guess looking back now, it makes more sense as to like what changed in terms of like him checking in and just being more present. He would, yeah,
But-
he would just like, I had someone I could talk to, and now it's just kind of like
Here's a guy who, if I can speak for you, and correct me if I'm saying it wrong, here's a guy who feels he's not needed, and here's a gal who needs you desperately. How's that message getting so screwed up that it's not working? Could you tell her how much you need to be needed?
Well, I like to feel like you turn to me to help out with the kids more than asking your parents to do it, I guess.
What'd you hear him say?
that he would like me to ask him before I ask my parents for help with the kids.
Okay. Would that be possible?
It could be. I guess he works so much that I just assume that he is unable to help out.
You talked to him about that.
With like the time you're coming home on the weekdays, I guess I don't know what I would ask of you, like if me asking of you would be too much, would get in the way of your work schedule.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like a chicken or the egg kind of thing, because I feel like not being needed, I tend to kind of lose myself in work stuff, and so I'll stay at work longer, and then when I come home I kind of feel like I'm not needed, so I kind of just expect that when I come home I'll be, eating dinner either with you guys if you haven't already eaten, or by myself.
Would you want us to wait for you to eat dinner?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel like the after dinner, like, do you feel like I don't, like, need you? Or how could I, like, I guess, best incorporate you?
That's a good point, because he has to be at work. So when he comes home, most of the stuff with the children's pretty much done for the day. Rather than just helping with the children, what else do you need him for?
I guess
You tell him that.
I always kind of feel like the bad guy, and you're the good guy that comes home with the kids, so I guess helping me out with discipline, and I know you can't really do that if nothing happens, but,
Okay, so then take the kids out of the equation. Do you need them for anything else other than being a second parent in the house?
I feel really exhausted at the end of the day, and sometimes I just want to like talk with someone about how difficult it's been and not really contradict me, just listen. Because I talk to a lot of kids during the day and I don't talk to many adults.
So a partner to share things with,
Yeah.
not necessarily to be just to be a co-parent. That'd be nice,
Mhm.
but you're not gonna give up the job. Okay? You need the income. Talked about the income earlier. But there are other things that you might need him for, and that would help you feel needed. And one of those is, I need to be able to share what's inside of me.
Mhm.
Is that something you could do?
Well, when you were talking about that, I was reminded of how we used to kind of carve out those date nights once or twice a week.
Mhm.
And leave the kids with their grandparents?
Yeah.
Because they do live close. That is
Totally
one
forgot
perk.
about that.
Stress will do wonders for your memory.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That would be really fun, going somewhere that wasn't fast food.
Yeah, we started to kind of go to Wendy's, Chuck E. Cheese to appease the kids' instant gratification needs, I feel like.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sensing you need some decompression time when he comes home.
Mhm.
How much? 10 minutes, half hour, 3 hours?
I would say
Realistically?
at least an hour. I just need, yeah. I mean, it would be great to just kind of finish up dinner and like the dishes and then go and not be needed for like an hour.
With him?
It could be with him. I think right now I could just even be on my own and not be with anyone. And then maybe after we put the kids to bed, I could see us like having time to actually sit down and talk about the day. Because I feel like when you come home sometimes, like it's right in the middle of an event or like getting ready for bed, and it's just never a really good time to talk. And so, yeah, maybe like after bedtime with the girls, finding time to.
What time do they go to bed?
7:30, 8 o'clock.
Okay. So, I'm glad you clarified, because it made me a little bit nervous a little bit when you said, when he comes home, I need an hour alone with nobody else. Which seemed a little bit different from what you were saying originally, that I need him.
Yeah.
And then to say I don't need anybody. But then you said later on, but after, I need some just decompression, quiet time.
Yeah.
And then we can engage after the kids are in bed and not be distracted and spend how much time talking then?
I think, 15, 30 minutes. Just depending on the day.
Okay. When would you get your downtime? Because you're the one who likes to withdraw and be in your own room. Almost like a little bit of an introvert? You recharge by being alone? Does that fit you at all?
I think it's more that I distract myself with other things. So
Okay.
if my thoughts are kind of racing, I like to kind of focus on
Racing
something.
from work, or racing from the family, or racing from thinking about the relationship?
I think all of those things, yeah.
Okay. Would you be distracted by being the only parent in the building while she goes for a little walk for a half hour to an hour?
In the evening, you mean?
Yeah. So you're doing a tag team, you know? She's had him all day, you come home, you slap out, it's yours, and she leaves.
I think I could hang out with the kids for an hour. Yeah.
Mm.
And you come back and you have supper. No, you have to have supper first because you come home late. But then you
Yeah.
get them ready for bed, and then afterwards you have 15, 20 minutes just to talk. And not about the kids.
Mm.
You ever had a conversation without the kids in a long time?
Not that I can remember.
Yeah, I can. It's been a while.
See, one of the things that is not unusual when kids come along and they're still kind of young, parents don't really check in with each other on anything other than parenthood. And you've got a few more years before you can just really leave them on their own. But in the meantime, you're changing and you're changing. Life experience happens, you read things in the news, your opinions change. But if you don't keep in touch with each other 8 years from now, you don't even know who each other are.
Mm.
So how can you have conversations for 15, 20 minutes before, after the kids have gone to bed, before you go to bed, to just check in with who you are as human beings, as people who are growing, and what you want in your relationship? What are your hopes, your dreams? Have they changed? Has his changed in the last 2 years? Have your hers changed in the last 2 years? Can you talk about stuff that's not kids related? That happens at the handoff when you come back, or at supper time.
Mm. Yeah, I guess it's been a while since I've really checked in with how he's doing, like, at work. 'Cause I know he, like, before he had mixed feelings about working at a corporate job, but he still found it challenging enough. So, I guess it's been a while, so I think there's definitely things we, like, aren't caught up on.
I feel sometimes a little bit between a rock and a hard place too, because I don't necessarily enjoy my job that much.
Okay.
But I find that if I have to choose between having a huge argument at home versus,
Yeah, we're talking about stopping the arguments. We're finding ways to do that so that eventually you'll feel like, I can't wait to get home, I get to play with my 2 kids. And then I get to spend some time with my wife, asking me how my life is. What do you think about that idea?
that'd be all right.
Okay. I want to check back in with you, because you were talking about this exhaustion and stuff like that that's coming from all the stuff you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make a distinction between feeling burned out and just feeling tired. Feeling tired is when you do an awful lot of stuff. Feeling burned out is when you're doing an awful lot of stuff, but you're not getting any emotional goodies coming back in.
Yeah.
Do you feel appreciated for all the stuff you do?
No. I feel like, I don't really have anyone to talk to about, or get feedback from the kids, and if I'm doing a good job with them. And then...
They don't come up and say, Mom, you're doing a fantastic
Yeah.
job. Thank you for your wonderful mothering.
No. No, they don't.
Okay. Do you get that from your parents?
I feel like lately our conversations haven't been, around that at all. They love the girls, but I feel like they see how unhappy I am, so they talk about, Joe a lot.
And probably not very positive.
No. And so...
And so that, at some level, hurts too.
Yeah.
Do you still love this guy?
Yeah.
Did you tell him?
I love you, Joe.
Okay. Did she have a hard time saying that?
Seemed like a little bit.
Okay, why don't you ask her what that's all about?
What's your hesitation on saying it?
I feel like it's a really awkward thing, like we haven't said it in a while, so.
Oh my goodness gracious. No wonder you guys are in the pits. Okay. What you need from her and what you need from him, you're blocking. And you're spiraling. You're becoming more and more depressed. And you're becoming more and more burned out, not just tired.
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting any emotional goodies from anybody. When was the last time you said, I love you?
I don't know.
Okay, that was too long of a wait to figure it out. You still love her?
Yeah.
Can you let her know that?
Love you, Brianna.
Did you believe that?
Yeah.
But?
Yeah.
I heard a but there, but
I mean, I'm very much.
talk to him.
I feel like I don't really see it in like your actions, so like it just seems like you're kind of almost prompted to say it.
All right, that raises another question for me. In a relationship, we tend to love the other person the way we want to be loved.
Mm.
So, for instance, in my relationship with my wife, if I'm not feeling good, I want to be pampered, taken care of, homemade chicken noodle soup, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Because that's how I want to be taken care of. When my wife is sick, she becomes a cave bear. She wants to be in a darkened room with the blankets over her and growls if anybody disturbs her. Okay? If she treats me by what style she likes, I will feel horrible and I will feel abandoned. If I treat her the way I want to be treated, she will feel invaded and that my behavior there is intrusive. You need to find out how she wants to be loved the way she wants to be loved. You need to find out how he wants to be loved the way he wants to be loved. And not just presume to do it by what works for you. So, you said you're not quite sure how he's doing it and all that type of stuff. Maybe he's not doing it the way it needs to work for you. Tell him how it needs to work for you.
I feel like I need to see like ways you love me in actions, like around the house, and like
Specifics. We need a list here.
like maybe offering to come home early, or to like take the kids out, maybe like thinking of like something we could do as a family, maybe offering like it could even be like doing the dishes one night, and you know.
Okay, close. Most of those still are around parenting with a child and not spousing with the husband.
Like, if you thought of a date night, I mean, like, that was really cool that you remembered that stuff, but maybe, like, planning a date night would really mean a lot to me, because...
Now, is he able to do that because you already established that you're the lead?
Yeah, he would be.
Okay, talk to him about that then.
I like doing that.
Okay.
Good.
Well,
How'd that feel? Tell him how that felt.
Oh, that felt really good. Yeah, I mean, if you, like, talked to my parents and, like, asked them to cover, like, one night and had it planned, that would be great. It would be something, I guess, I could look forward to at the end of the day.
Okay. Now, since that's a way that you will feel loved by him, by your own standards, are we talking about anniversaries and Christmas? Are we talking about daily? What are we talking about? Give him a time frame.
I mean, I know you've been really busy, but, like, I feel like we used to do it, like, weekly or every other week. So, I guess depending, every other week would be really fun too.
Would that work for you? Because the worst thing in the world is to set up an agreement here that sets you up for failure. And then she gets pissed, you get depressed, and you have arguments.
I would actually prefer it if it was every week.
Okay. Yeah. Well, great. I can do
Okay.
that.
Now, tell her how you need to be loved. She likes to see it in, let me count the ways. What
Okay.
works for you?
I would say what I was thinking about when you were talking about what your needs were.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking more about how I really liked sometimes when I would come home from work and you would give me like a shoulder massage because I get really tense
Yeah.
at work, and that always felt really good.
Mm.
And I feel like we haven't been intimate in a while. And
Yeah,
that
sure.
was always kind of the highlight of date nights, from what I remember it was.
Still, you might offer daily then instead of weekly.
Yeah, I can see. I can appreciate that.
Yeah. And just like when I come home, like to maybe have like a hug and a kiss kind of a thing
Yeah.
is something that I remember really liking.
Okay.
What type of a hug and a kiss? Because there's a variety. There's the lean-to, where you're barely touching. There's the European one, where there's a hug but a smooch on the cheek. There's a bear hug, where you almost lift her off the floor, or you lift him off the floor. What type of hug and a kiss works best for you?
I would say a meaningful hug that lasts maybe at least 30 seconds.
I can try my best.
We call it a quickie. I would recommend a little longer, because at some point you need the skin touched back here. Okay?
Definitely
You need the
have-
back of your head touched to massage, because that starts soothing the central nervous system. And you need to be held before you are kissed to let the nervous system de-stress from the day.
And when you said to be held, that's really important. It needs
That's
to
the
kind
part.
of be like an embrace.
Enough physical closeness and contact, and just hold him before we even look into his eyes. Just hold him for a while. Then you can draw back, look at him, smile, and give him a nice smooch. Would that work for you?
That sounds perfect.
Okay.
Okay.
We're getting close to the end of our time from this session. I'd be interested in your thoughts on how it's been going so far.
I mean, I'm really excited about where it's going. I feel like this is the most we've talked about us in a while, so.
And that was the key, us and not just parents.
Mhm.
Okay? And,
Yeah.
and you, sir?
And I could see it as we kind of went through those exercises, like remembering a lot of the good things about what we used to do. And
Yeah.
like how to
Go
bring that back, and
Yeah.
how that was really fulfilling, and
Mhm.
that we've kind of diverged away from that
Yeah.
for various reasons.
Yeah, that's true.
I'd also want to offer that in your 15 to 20 minutes daily, talking about your relationship and each other. If you're running out of topics, there's a whole bunch of couples self-help, marital self-help books out there.
Mm.
Get a one or two of them. You may even spend that 15, 20 minutes reading it, and then the next night talking about it, and working through some of those texts, if you need more stuff to talk about. Because my concern is that you'll start talking about it, then all of a sudden one or two of you will slip, and all of a sudden you're parenting the kids, because that still is so much in your mind.
Mm.
So having something solid to look at might help. What would be the one or two things you're going to be taking away from today's session?
That my husband wants to be physically touched more. So a hug every time he comes in and a kiss. And that he wants to be needed, so it's okay to ask him to do things because he wants to be part of it.
You think she got it?
Yeah.
I think she did a very good job getting it. Yes. Well done. Very good.
Mm.
You, sir, what are you taking away from today's session?
That she would like to have some decompression time in the evening, and then some quality time to talk about things that aren't related to the kids. And I will coordinate a date night by recruiting your parents for good rather than evil.
Okay.
Great.
Did you get it?
Yeah.
I think you did. Very good job to you, sir. Okay. I want to give you a couple weeks to see if this can start working for you. and let's set up another appointment for about 2 weeks from today. Would that work?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, so there's one more thing I want to talk to you about after watching that video, and it's how you reference birth order and the different parents that interacted. Can you talk a bit more about what you were doing with that?
Oh, sure. In the template model, we look at some core principles, and one of those core principles is that of power or dominance in a relationship. Every relationship has a balance. And there's usually somebody a bit more dominant and somebody who's a bit more passive. We look at that to help us determine how sometimes behaviors are being passed on. And one common principle is that the dominant parent usually, as I say, gets the firstborn, which means the firstborn tends to either be closest to the dominant alpha or begins to take on patterns of that dominant parent, even if they don't necessarily get along. And same with the passive parent, or the more passive parent will get the secondborn. Things change when you start adding a third and fourth child and all that, but that's pretty much the start there. And that will help you have a sense of some of this transmission of behavior across generations.
Sure.
The second key principle is one of differentiation. In a healthy family, the system begins to differentiate from each other. They're not fused. And they also begin to not copy the automatic patterns from the family of origin. In the dysfunctional family, the differentiation doesn't occur. They may be very enmeshed, and they certainly don't separate from patterns of their family of origin. So that's what I was trying to demonstrate with looking at the alpha parent and the firstborn and how those behaviors start replicating.
Right.
Thank you for asking that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for spending time with us today as we're kind of exploring this fascinating model.
Thank you, Lindsay.